This presentation focuses on a particular relationship of the EU's interregional network, namely the partnership between the EU and ex-colonies of the member states, which are the countries and regions in Africa, the Caribbean and the Pacific, also known as ACP countries. Cooperation between these regions lasts for almost 60 years and is currently underpinned by the Cotonou Agreement. This agreement is built on three main pillars and includes cooperation on aid and development, economic and trade cooperation, and political cooperation. The agreement was signed in 2000 but will expire in 2020. A key question in the literature and the debate on EU-ACP relations is a question whether this relationship is an expression of an equal partnership, as it proclaims to be, or whether it is just a continuation of an asymmetrical partnership and a relic of a colonial past. The interregional cooperation between the ACP and the EU is underpinned by joint institutions, and one of those is the ACP-EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly. Much research focuses on the intergovernmental dimension, but this research project focuses on the parliamentary dimension of the relationship. The JPA is the oldest and most institutionalized parliamentary assembly between countries and regions of the global north and south. It exists for more than 50 years and brings together more than 150 parliamentarians from 105 countries from 4 different continents. The JPA is the oldest interparliamentary institution of the EU, but it has more recently served as a model for similar North-South parliamentary relations, such as in the EU's relations with the Mediterranean and with Latin America. Literature has referred to the parliamentarization of the EU's interregional context, which has led to a series of new research questions, such as: what is the added value of parliamentary diplomacy? So is a JPA simply a talking shop, or does it have other functions? Or what kind of purpose does it serve? Is it to promote the EU's own model, or do ideas travel in reciprocal directions to promote mutual understanding? In this research project, we try to combine and build on the insights of the existing literature, and we thus study specifically the asymmetry of the ACP-EU relationship by focusing on the debate that takes place within the ACP-EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly. To do so, we have opted for the theoretical framework of deliberation, which was developed by Jürgen Habermas. Inspired by his discourse ethics, we developed an analytical framework which is based on 5 criteria for ideal deliberation. These criteria are necessary in order to arrive at valid norms or legitimate outcomes between different political actors. With this analytical table, we were able to study the quality of deliberation in the JPA and to say something about the asymmetry in the relationship. Empirically, we focus on the debates in the JPA on the trade development nexus, the economic partnership agreements, one of the most exemplary issues for demonstrating unequal partnership between the EU and ACP countries, as became clear from the presentation of Professor Jan Orbi. A key obstacle in the negotiations was on what constitutes development-friendly EPAs. On the methods. For this project, our analysis is based on participatory observation by Yentil Williams and I during different JPA sessions. We conducted 26 semi-structured interviews and made an analysis of several primary documents, including more than 40 resolutions and 120 parliamentary questions over the past 15 years. This brings me to the actual results about deliberation in the JPA, which are rather mixed, as we have found that real dialogue between the different regions is not always guaranteed because of several problems. I don't have time to go into detail here, but I will just give you 2 examples from 2 criteria. The first example is on participation. On the one hand, we found striking differences in participation which underscore the asymmetry between the EU and the ACP. ACP regions do not have permanent individual members, only permanent country members, and these usually represent their respective governments and majority parties. EU participants are referred to with their names and represent different political parties in the parliament. But on the other hand, if we look at the substance of deliberation, we can say that participation is positive, as the debates clearly reflect a variety of opinions on all the possible positive and negative implications of the economic partnership agreements. So it seems that a whole range of parliamentarians' opinions from the different regions are reflected in the deliberation. Another example from our analysis is that on the one hand, in contrast to their governmental counterparts, parliamentarians of the different regions are able to agree on a consensus on the development dimension of the economic partnership agreements. However, on the other hand, despite this general presence of solidarity and consensus, the question was also raised whether this consensus wasn't just based on the EU's preferences and values, pointing to a Eurocentric construction of this consensus. As one interviewee stated, the JPA is a structure for giving pretense of democratic legitimacy and ACP endorsement of the EU position. All in all, we can conclude that the JPA struggles to approach the ideal type of deliberation. We found that the JPA may indeed be a talking shop, but that talking can also be functional. Although ideas do not always travel in reciprocal directions, the JPA is driven by a logic of building trust and understanding in order to maintain relations between parliamentarians in the EU and ACP regions. This research project has left us with new insights and a new perspective on the importance of the JPA in ACP-EU relations, but also with several unanswered issues which need to be developed in further research. A key question for both policymakers and researchers is what role the parliamentary dimension will play in the post-Cotonou framework. How can this dimension be preserved and improved?